now is Professor of Modern Jewish History at the Sorbonne in Paris. Her research, she's written so much and published so much. I'll just introduce you to one detail. Her research focuses on the intersection between French and American Jewish life during the Holocaust. So it's with great pleasure that I welcome you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I promise not to say thank you, but I can't resist. So I will start with an anecdote from a conversation that many of us have had over the past 9 months. Expressing my guilt for being unable to go home, my mom showed newfound stoicism. It's completely okay, she told me. The war lasted 5 years. This is 1 year. I can handle it. Such a statement implies a resilience gained from lived experience during the Holocaust. Yet my mom was born in Detroit in 1946. It feels self-indulgent to share this story. American Jews were the lucky ones. To claim shared memory or a visceral connection with Holocaust survival smacks of appropriation, even if we're also told, and there's a very strong narrative, that we are the same people. Historian Peter Novick rightfully questions the nature of the American Jewish relationship to the Holocaust. Historian Laura Levitt, however, takes an altogether different path in American Jewish losses after the Holocaust, suggesting that there is an interplay between the ordinary losses of Jewish Americans and the extraordinary losses of the Holocaust. In this context, the post-memory of my family's experiences during World War I and its violent aftermath take on distinct emotional meanings and certainly fuse in certain places with Holocaust narratives. My mother's mother, my grandma Lottie, came to the United States in 1928 as a young teen. Her town of origin, Tel Echan, was located not far from Pinsk and unfortunately was also on the front of World War I. The family had to flee soon after her birth in 1915. I know little of her life before she obtained, with her father and some of her sisters, a coveted visa to the United States. I know that at some point they were in Kiev, and this may be the place where her own mother, Miriam, died of typhus. The family was most likely still in Kiev during the pogroms of 1917 to 1920. When her father was lined up to be shot in a firing squad, my young grandma was sent to beg for mercy and was kicked across a courtyard. The oldest daughter of the family, my Aunt Ray, a beauty, replaced her and succeeded in freeing the men. According to this family story, Ray was covered with gifts, fur coats, and many newborn girls were thereafter named Rachel in her honor. As a historian, I am convinced that family stories are glass beads. I do not have many of them, and they can be easily crushed by too much scrutiny. If I deconstruct them by trying to anchor them in space and time, I might have only dust. This intangible post-memory, so beautifully theorized by Marian Hirsch and embodied in the image of my great-grandmother Miriam in the only picture we have of her, created a very real space for imagining and remembering, but especially transmission within my family. While quiet on her own past, my grandma filled daily life with injunctions for the future, expressing an unarticulated fear of premature separation. Kiss on the cheek, never on the lips. My mother, without missing a beat, continues to explain the proper way to open a jar. In contrast to my grandma's silence on the past, my mom shares the family stories with great relish, acting as a memorial candle, to use Dina Vardy's concept. Yet if Vardy suggests that parents choose one child in particular to act as memorial candle, I might add that the child too also chooses to untangle one ancestor's story in particular. Like most American Jews, I also have a Hebrew name. Mine is Bati Rachel, named after Basha Liba, the aunt in Detroit who probably made the visas happen. And of course, Aunt Ray, the heroine of the pogrom story. An invitation thus to untangle the story, that I probably deflect onto others' intimate stories. The transmitted experience of ordinary loss has certainly forged my listening space for narratives of the Holocaust. I embrace the method of oral history, replacing my silent grandma with grandparents who are willing to share the past. Yet this personal approach to history raises a distinct set of ethical questions. One of the most central questions is the question of names. Most of the individuals I interviewed for my second book, called Becoming Refugee, which is on the migrations of children between the 1938 to 42 period, granted me the right to use their real names and even insisted on this. Yet as I developed my analysis, I sensed it would become a problem. By historicizing the narratives and revealing their inherent contradictions, I was essentially crushing their glass beads. Anthropologists grapple with restitution. Historians rarely do so. I decided to take the risk of showing my manuscript to several individuals in my study. I was not surprised to find that my research at times led to the destruction of previous narratives, yet sometimes to the creation of new ones. For one article on the relationship between two sisters, I instinctively changed their names before showing it to them, then waited with trepidation for their reaction. I was surprised that there were even very minor changes, and they insisted that I replace their false names with their real names. I did so, resubmitted the article, only to receive the ominous email, "Laura, we have a problem." A second interviewee shared her ambiguous tale of family solidarity. Her French relative had a passport that would have allowed her to smuggle 4 children out of Germany. The relative refused to take 4, but did take 2. In Paris, the sisters were separated, the younger ones sent to even more distant relatives who left her in a park during the day while they worked. Reading my text, she had second thoughts on sharing the story. "This is not the legacy I want to pass on. I don't want anyone to look like I'm complaining. I don't want to look like I'm complaining," she told me. Finally, Ernst Walfer, who remains, after reading my manuscript, committed to my use of his real name, described his departure from Frankfurt for France on a Kindertransport in 1939. Ernst had had his bar mitzvah, yet the family was not Orthodox. Still, before leaving, 14-year-old Ernst received a gift from his mother, a talit katan, a prayer shawl to wear daily. She said, "The Orthodox have taken you out, you stay with them, and you do what they do." So for all my time in Paris, I was Orthodox. Ernst initially passed, and then eventually became a practicing Jew in France. Religious children were cared for by the Austrian pedagogue Ernst Papanek in a home run by the Jewish organization Oze. Ernst's response to my manuscript was altogether surprising. He wrote to me, "I shivered to read that had my mother not impressed on me to stay with the Orthodox group from Frankfurt, I would have never met Ernst Papanek and probably would not have ended up on the transport from France to the United States in May 1941. Survivors like Ernst Walfer took my work in stride. My historical narrative allowed him to find new meaning in his mother's injunction to stay among the Orthodox. This put him into contact with Ernst Papanek, who remained a father figure to him long after he learned of his parents' murder. It also provides a means for understanding why he was selected for the life-saving transport from France to the United States. Ernst found a way for his mother to save his life. Narratives of post-memory and memory, of lived and non-lived experiences, resist logic, yet forge for some a listening space or resilience, an argument for leaving some intact, untouched by the quill of the historian.